Now on BBC One, the lunchtime news with Kasia Madera.
Hello, good afternoon. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, has told the BBC that globalisation as we know it has ended. Speaking in the wake of Donald Trump's new import levies, Mr Jones said that Britain now needed to explore other markets than the US. Well, this comes as the Prime Minister said that he would use industrial policy, expected to be announced this week, to help protect the UK economy. Here's our political correspondent, Billy Kember.
The era of globalisation as we've known it is over. That's the view of the Labour government, voiced this morning by a senior minister. Globalisation is credited with enabling cheap fashion and electronics as companies buy and sell goods on a global scale, resulting in economies which are increasingly interconnected.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
But President Trump's decision to impose tariffs on US imports threatens to disrupt the global flow of goods and upend the established economic order. It has forced the government to decide how to respond. Appearing on the BBC's Sunday with Laura Koonsberg, Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, said the world has changed.
Yeah, it's ended. I mean, the Prime Minister said that himself this morning. Globalisation, as we've known it for the last number of decades, has come to an end. That's why we need Britain to be strong and resilient, also build out our relationships with our allies and partners around the world, but also why we have to invest in the domestic economy, both for UK businesses, but also our public services.
The Prime Minister has spent the weekend on the phone to international leaders as he talks up the benefits of free trade and warns of the risk of a global trade war. The government hasn't ruled out retaliating with its own tariffs on the US, but it is in no rush to do so, and Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said she agreed this was the right approach. She called for the government to use previous negotiations from President Trump's first term to speed up trade deal talks.
I would like the government to pick up where we left off. We had 6 rounds of negotiations where there were some decisions that were concluded, and they can pick that up and take it. But the most important thing is removing tariffs. The tariffs are going to be destructive for our businesses. You talked about Jaguar Land Rover. They've stopped exporting. That is going to make a whole mess of the tax take that Rachel Reeves thought she was going to be getting in her budget. We are in a worse place now than we were because of the decisions that Labour has made.
Tomorrow, Sir Keir Starmer will give a speech addressing the economic turmoil. It could include unveiling Labour's industrial strategy to help the economy grow. But huge uncertainty remains, a particular challenge for a government which has put growth at the heart of its mission. Billy Kember, BBC News.
Well, our business correspondent Mark Ashdown joins us. So, Mark, is this the end of globalisation?
Well, look, Donald Trump's first term was all about building a wall to keep migrants out. I think this term is about building a different kind of wall to keep jobs in. These tariffs are very simple, really. They're about raising the cost for businesses, which make stuff abroad, sell them in America. The hope is if Americans buy American, that creates more jobs and pushes wages up. So I think, yes, broadly speaking, as we know it, the end of decades of global free trade is more or less over, certainly in America. I think the hope is this is the start, not the end of the discussion. Governments broadly have 3 choices. They can retaliate, whack their own tariffs on US goods. They can negotiate, pick up the phone to the White House and try and reduce the tariffs on them, or invest in their own businesses, their own economies to try and support them through this. And I think, broadly speaking, all 3 of those things are happening this weekend, but it does feel like a bit of a pause as well. Stock markets are closed. They'll open again tonight in Asia. There are already predictions of some kind of Black Monday if hedge funds get squeezed, forced into a fire sale and things spiral downwards. And America's biggest bank, JP Morgan, has just raised the chances of a global recession this year from 40% to 60%. So the stakes couldn't be higher.
Yes, they certainly are. Mark Ashdown, thank you very much. 2 Labour MPs who were denied entry to Israel say that they are astounded by the decision. Yuan Yang and Abdissam Mohammed have now returned to the UK. The Israeli authorities say that they were refused entry because they intended to spread hate speech against Israel, while the Foreign Secretary described the incident as unacceptable. Here's Ellie Price.
Abdissam Mohammed and Yuan Yang are home now, having spent just under 16 hours in Tel Aviv airport. They said they were planning, in their words, to witness firsthand the situation in the occupied West Bank, with British charities experienced in running trips with MPs. But the Israeli Immigration Authority said, after questioning, they were denied entry to the country over concerns about hate speech. The pair say they were targeted for earlier interventions they had made in Parliament.
Ethnic cleansing is taking place before our very own eyes and the world remains silent.
We would like more action, and we do not think the current action is enough.
The Israeli embassy in London this morning said in a statement on X that the State of Israel had the duty to prevent the entry of individuals whose presence in the country is intended to cause harm to the state and its citizens, and that the two British MPs had accused Israel of false claims, were actively involved in promoting sanctions against Israeli ministers, and supported campaigns aimed at boycotting the State of Israel. This morning, the Conservative leader Kevin Badenoch was also critical of the pair.
Countries should be able to control their borders. What I think is shocking is that we have MPs in Labour who other countries will not allow through. I think that's very significant. If you look at the reasons why the Israeli government has given for why they're not letting them in, they don't believe that they're going to comply with their laws.
Earlier, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy criticised Israeli authorities, a move he says was unacceptable, counterproductive and deeply concerning. He later accused the Tory leader of cheerleading another country for detaining and deporting two British MPs, a view shared by his Labour colleague.
People listen to what these two young women say, and they will do for decades to come. And in my view, Israel really needs to start making friends as opposed to alienating people in this way. I think that it's an insult to Britain and I think it's an insult to Parliament. I am outraged.
The Foreign Office said the MPs were part of an official parliamentary delegation, though Israel's Immigration Authority disputes such a delegation had been acknowledged by any Israeli official. The MPs, now home, will no doubt have more comments to make on Israel. Ellie Price, BBC News.
Well, Gary O'Donoghue is in Jerusalem. So, Gary, just how bad a spat is this between the UK and Israel?
Well, I think you can see from the pretty hot language, both from the Foreign Secretary and indeed from the Israeli authorities, that this is a serious diplomatic spat. This doesn't normally happen to parliamentarians. They enjoy a kind of status when they travel to countries on observer missions like this. And normally they're given some pretty clear passage. But Israel took exception to these two in particular. And I think in particular to some of their past activities, their past comments. They referred to this whole question of boycotting Israel's sanctions on Israeli ministers. That means they checked them out before they got here. It's not only a diplomatic spat, of course, though, because it's now turned into a domestic political spat with David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, saying that really the comments from the Conservative leader were disgraceful. So this is developing into something much bigger, I think, and we'll see what the two MPs have to say about the nature of their interrogation. Israel says they were given the opportunity to petition a court to change that decision, but they chose not to.
Gary O'Donoghue in Jerusalem, thank you. Pope Francis has made his first public appearance since leaving hospital 2 weeks ago. Appearing on stage in a wheelchair with a breathing tube under his nose, the Pope briefly addressed the crowds in St. Peter's Square. He thanked them and wished everyone a happy Sunday. The rise in national insurance contributions for employers announced in the Chancellor's October budget has now come into force. From today, employers will have to pay a 15% rate of national insurance contributions on their employees, and that's up from 13.8%. The Conservatives have branded the increase a jobs tax. Rachel Reeves said it would raise £25 billion per year by 2029. The owners of a holiday park in Lincolnshire, where 2 people died in a caravan fire, have expressed their deepest sympathies to the victims' families. Emergency services were called to the site after a fire broke out in the early hours yesterday. Jessica Lane reports.
Flowers and teddies in memory of the 48-year-old man and 10-year-old girl who died in their caravan, which was just behind the pub where people gathered this morning. Those who knew them and others who just felt moved by what happened.
It's like they were family members, do you know what I mean? They weren't just customers to us. Everyone behind the bar knew them, coming in every weekend. It was always just have a good chat, and at the end of the night, every night, it was a handshake or a hug and see you tomorrow. Just the life and soul, and just to be able not to just see him ever again, it's unbelievable.
Just so sad, and like when you've got little ones, it's just heartbreaking. You're meant to come on holiday to enjoy yourself, aren't you? It's just, you can't put into words.
We were holidaying down here for the weekend, and when we heard about the tragedy, you know, we thought we just had to come. When you've got kids, it just breaks your heart, doesn't it? It really does.
The caravan fire started in the early hours yesterday. Golden Beach Holiday Park has sent sympathies and condolences to friends and families of the two people who died and say their thoughts are with everyone affected. An online fundraiser has been set up and organisers say money donated will go to help with funeral costs. Police and the fire service say they're keeping an open mind about how this fire started as they continue their investigations today, while friends and family of the two people who died come together to grieve and mourn and remember. Jessica Lane, BBC News in Invermouth.
In Formula One, the reigning champion, Red Bull's Max Verstappen, has won the Japanese Grand Prix. It's his first victory of the season. The McLaren drivers Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were second and third, respectively. Joe Linsky watched the action.
In Formula One, it's a familiar story, but this for Max Verstappen was a different way to victory. His Red Bull this year is not the quickest car, but somehow in qualifying, he'd found a way to pole.
Where it's lights out and away we go, Verstappen!
Verstappen got out first ahead of Britain's Lando Norris, and for 53 laps that was how it stayed. For Norris, the one chance to get past was in the pit lane. He and Verstappen went in at the same time, and when they emerged, the two went wheel to wheel.
Oh, and there's Norris onto the grass!
The stewards checked to see if Norris had been forced off, but in the end they agreed with Verstappen's assessment.
He drove himself into the grass.
Yeah, we know the game, Max.
The top six on the grid would end this race where they started. When Verstappen drives like this, no one else can overtake.
That's perfection, just perfection, Max.
Of course, it's great, but very different scenarios compared to, I would say, the last few years here. You know, today was key to start first. Yeah, just incredibly happy with this result.
It puts him 1 point behind Norris in the standings. The Britain and McLaren may have the faster car, but this is Max Verstappen, and the champion's hard to stop. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
That's all from me. The next news here on BBC One is at 10 to 5. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.